Hello Nippies, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, hi, hello, I'm Nips, a freelance artist, and today we're going to be working on these postcards, which are two traditional pieces of my characters Anya and Jet from my 18 plus comic off sale, which you can check out in the description down below. I'll share the links. And these two postcards were done for charity for the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project, hosted on Tiltify, and I had 2 slot rewards for a certain amount of donation for hand-drawn postcards. And it's been a really long time since I've done these, and I did them on stream. So hopefully that's something you guys will enjoy and stick around for. Let's get right into it. Okay, so we're gonna start off, again, these are my characters, Jet and Anya, and I always start with a sketch on just plain white paper, just to think of like the thumbnails, think of the poses, and what I do is, what you'll see here is that I trace the size of the postcard, the final one, so that way I can have an idea of what it's gonna look like on the final postcard. And I usually use watercolor paper for these, and sometimes it's hot press, sometimes it's cold press, but in general it's always watercolor paper. And what happens is, like, I love doing like several iterations. There's a lot of erasing, heavy pencil lines, lots of drafting, and so I tend to do this on a separate sheet just because I don't want to ruin the paper. I want to keep the paper as clean as possible. You don't really want to erase too much on it. And even with the I'm not remembering the name right now, but that one, you can basically like roll over the paper and stuff, but it doesn't erase as much as you'd like. So I kind of have to just use that to make the drawing lighter. And so what I do is I'll do it like this, find a good sketch. This one I didn't have too many thumbnails just because, if any at all, I don't really see them on paper, but this one I had a pretty clear idea. This one on the left is Jet, of what I wanted. And so on the right, we have the Borderlands 2 Maya. And originally I sketched this because there was a confusion between the donor and I about who the character was for the sketch request on stream and the sketch request for the postcard, because the donor was kind enough to donate a large amount of money and really help for the cause, and so they were able to get a postcard and a sketch request, a digital sketch request. And so I inverted them by accident, and so they had asked for Anya and also Maya, so you'll see that one there. But later when we get into the Anya postcard, you'll see that I go ahead and I sketch that one out as well. So here you're going to see me improvising a light box. So back when I did a lot of traditional work, I had a separate light box, which wasn't even mine. It was my roommate Sade's. And it was so convenient every time I did postcards, because I did them very, very often. I did a lot of traditional work as well. And a light box, for those of you that don't know, it's just kind of like, it's literally what it is. It's just a metal, usually metal, plastic, anything large, kind of like the size of a paper, maybe even larger. Basically just emits light and really helps with like tracing work. And so it was very, very easy to do those sketches that you see on the paper and then transfer them to another drawing very clean. And so what I did was I used the back of my phone light in order to angle it and just kind of get the general vibe of the sketch, the composition, and how much space it was going to take on the paper onto the clean watercolor paper. And I did that with the green colored lead and the color pencil so that it wouldn't stain the paper too much. And it would be easy to kind of get the general shape, easy to erase, and then we can use the pencil to kind of refine it on top. And there's a thing with the camera that I've been using. So I've been using the webcam to capture these postcards because I did them on stream. And the issue is that you'll see that it's kind of blurry. I really tried my best to adjust the settings of the camera, adjust the focus, but there's always some sort of blur. And if you saw the zoom ins at the beginning, and you'll see the zoom ins at the end of the videos so that you can get a better idea of what the postcards look like in person, then you'll see how much better the quality is. And that's because I used my phone essentially for the B-roll. And I've been thinking about just swapping over to my phone. For stream, it's a lot easier to just use the webcam. And so back in the day, I used to use my phone, and it was just so much better. Like, the quality of the iPhone camera is much, much better, but it's really inconvenient. The space on the phone, the time it takes a really, really long time to update. Sometimes the format is just not good. And so I had some people suggest to me a document camera, which is just very good with capturing paper. And so when I work traditionally, it might just be a better alternative than working with the webcam camera. So I apologize in advance for the very, very low quality of the capturing of the whole process. And especially since this video is so long, you're probably gonna have to endure this if you decide to watch for the entirety of the video with just pretty bad quality. So you'll see me here just starting to work on the lines. I always do the pencil with one of the thinnest leads. I think it's either 0.03, 0.3, sometimes 0.5. But I really like to get in there with the details. So the smaller the lead, the better. Even here, you'll see me using the microns at 0.3 or 0.005, just saw it on the pen. And I really just love like a lot of details in my lines and my sketches and everything. So always use the smallest one I can. And so a lot of the times, even because of that, I use those like binocular things that you put, they have like a zoom in thing. They really help you like see closer. And they're just so interesting and fun, and it really helps with the hunching too, because when I do these, if you've watched some speed paints of these, you'll see me like the top of my head like in the camera frame, and I'm just like hunching over the drawing, and it kind of like hurts my neck and my back as well. And as you get older, you really just want to avoid that. And so, so that really helps. And if you're curious about any of the materials that I use in these, I always put them in my Amazon shop page so you can see exactly the materials that I use. It is an affiliate link, so some of the commission does go to me if you purchase anything off it. It really helps. But yeah, I'll put that link in the description down below if you guys are interested. And yeah, so here we are just completing the lines. And a lot of the theme for this, if you know anything about my color tastes, I really just love like super saturated colors. Like a lot of my drawings are very bright and colorful, and I just love neon colors. And so one of the concepts that I had for this was just a very fun vibe. And I wanted to keep the character just in black and white, grayscale. And that's also one thing I really like to do in traditional pieces, which is to keep the character just in black and white, because I just love working with grayscale traditionally. It's just so satisfying, especially when you have those like very, very dark, intense black shadows and then do like a very subtle gradient. It's just, ooh, chef's kiss. So satisfying. And so I thought that I'd incorporate the best of both worlds by doing that, and then doing really, really bright like rainbow neon colors in the back and some accents as well. And so you'll see that coming up later when we do the digital draft. Right now, I'm adding some weight to the lines as I finish the line art. So you'll notice here that right now the drawing is kind of flat. Usually I'll do, sometimes I can't control myself and I'll start adding them even though I haven't finished the lines. But usually I'll do like a quote unquote like flat rendition of the lines first. So there's no real like line weight to anything. It's just singular lines. And then once the whole thing is done, I'll go back in and add some weight here and there, depending on where it is in the frame. Like, is it close to the camera? Is it far away? Is it in front of something? Am I trying to separate it from another object? I'm really trying my best at that stage to make it come alive, to just make the lines look really good by themselves and not rely on the color. And so you'll see some parts of the hair, some parts of the arms, and some parts of the hair at the bottom. start to have these like little black chunks. So those are the pieces where I couldn't control myself and I just kind of started adding them. But here is where we get to the adding the line weight. So you'll see me kind of like making certain things darker, really starting to bring the drawing to life, and using the kneaded eraser. Kneaded eraser? Not sure how to say it. But yeah, so I use that one to kind of erase essentially the pencil underneath without ruining the lines. So if you haven't used that eraser before or anything like it, I highly recommend. If you're a traditional artist and you work with pencils and inks and all that sort of thing, where you have to layer it and get rid of the second layer under without ruining the top, I highly recommend it. Because before I used that one, I used to use just, your standard gum eraser, and there was a huge problem about kind of destroying the lines, and so I basically had to go over the lines every time. So this really helps. You can just roll it over the paper and even like rub it a bit, and it just doesn't destroy the paper or the lines. So definitely give it a try. So here we're going into the color sampling, which is basically what I call it. I took a picture of the postcard, and you'll see how different the quality is just from the picture compared to the speed paint capture. Just such a difference. So I'm sorry again that you have to deal with such low quality speed painting. But so normally what I do is I take a picture, I import the picture onto my iPad. I use Procreate, so that's the program that you're seeing on screen. And then the great thing about the Procreate and just the Apple products in general is you can definitely have multiple windows and do multiple things at once. So usually I'll have like Pinterest like open on the side, or Google or anything, and that way we can have both screens. And here on Pinterest you'll see at the top that I searched rainbow patterns. I just really wanted to go for as many colors as possible, and so I saw this pattern on the right where it's like rainbow like squiggly paint drops, and I was really inspired by it. So I kind of used it to incorporate, all the colors of the rainbow. I did like a fun gradient all the way down to the bottom as well, and started mixing in the colors. So you'll see that it's slightly messy because the only purpose of this is to plan out the colors in advance. I'm not good enough to just wing the colors and do them all in just off the top of my head improvising. So there's still some improvising even without this. Even with this. So sometimes, like you start painting even with like an idea in mind, and you just come up with something new, and then it just works out, or it doesn't sometimes. So you'll see that even when I start painting it, we did change a couple things. We added a couple other things. So, and even when you have like, those happy accidents, you kind of have to work with it and improvise there as well. So, this is just a very general idea. So we have like a vision that we can work with and just head towards. And the really good thing about this is that it also allows me to kind of just freely just envision. I get really scared because I don't know if there's any other digital painters out there that also do traditional, but they're mostly digital. And I get really scared because even with the color planning, once you put things on paper, especially if you use watercolor, it's almost impossible to go back. Like you just can't. And so even with color picking, like even with a sample, if you don't pick the right color, if it just doesn't come out right, then you're kind of stuck and you have to work with it. So you'll see later when we're working, I don't think on this one we end up using gouache. The white highlights on the hair, I do end up using the Japanese, the white painter paint. I don't remember what it's called, but it's so good. It's very, very strong. So sometimes when I have to do white highlights, I'll use that. But there is a new postcard coming out, not the Anya one, but another one that I'll have a speed paint for as well. And you'll see that one, I make a pretty big mistake by rubbing black ink on the side of the paper, and I do have to fix it with gouache. So yeah, you'll see in this one that there are some issues with the color picking, how some colors like mix together even if you let them dry. And I like watercolor because it's really hard to reactivate like once it's on the paper, and you can layer them. So that's amazing. You can, you know, get different sorts of shades and concentrations and mixing colors by just layering them. But here in this section, I use the PH Martins, like the inks, and I'll put those in the description down below. They're in my shop. And I absolutely love them because they're super, super neon. They're very, very bright and concentrated. But the only problem is that those reactivate pretty quickly when you put water over them. So getting this sort of like rainbow pattern where there's a lot of like very strict lines of colors like very, very close together, you'll notice that some of the colors start bleeding into each other. Maybe not at this quality of the camera, but maybe in some other parts it'll be more obvious, but the colors kind of start bleeding into each other. And even in the blue part, you'll notice that in the sample, the blue is like much, much brighter, like sky blue, and it's just starting to bleed into the green. They almost look like the same color. And so there were a lot of like workarounds that we had to do and just like improvise and kind of like work with. And there were a lot more of those in the Anya one because there was a certain color that I decided to put in the color sample that I just did not have IRL. And once I realized that, well, I didn't realize it. I knew that I didn't think I could make the color, and I was just like copiuming that it was gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. I'll let Future Nips handle it. And then Future Nips got there and was like, wait, surprise Pikachu, I don't actually have this color. And so you'll see that later. But here, if you don't realize why the colors, because I can tell that on the camera you can't really see it, but why the colors are not bleeding out, and that's because we're using the liquid latex. Also have that in the Amazon shop if you're unfamiliar with the product, but it is a godlike traditional material, just tool in general. And I don't remember who I got this from because I didn't know this existed until I saw a speed paint from another artist who works traditionally as well. And I was like, why did I not know this existed? This is so helpful. And basically what it is, it's just like, it's liquid latex. It's basically just liquid and it's like rubber. You'll see me here putting it on the glasses so that we can just paint the lenses without it going outside of the area very freely. And so you just put it around the area that you want to paint. So the paint, and it'll dry, and it basically feels like rubber. And so you'll see me here like blocking out the squares of the checkers because I want to make the checkers a gradient. And so you just wait for it to dry. It feels like rubber. And when you paint, you'll see here, we can freely do a gradient. And it's much easier to do one because you can basically paint over the rubber and nothing is going to happen. And then what you do is you let it dry and then you rub it off. And it's very seamless. It doesn't destroy the drawing under. It's essentially just helping you color in the lines. And if you're someone who loves gradients, which I'm one of those people, it really helps you do the smoothest gradient of all time. Because if you have to paint around too many things, you kind of lose the flow of the gradient. It doesn't look as clean because you're trying to paint around too many things. And so this just helps you put a wash of water before you put your paints, and then they just go on so smooth and blend in together beautifully. And so for those of you that don't know, I also learned this from the traditional artist that I got this same liquid latex thing from. But if you're wondering how to do a really, really smooth gradient, you'll see me doing it here. What you have to do is you fill the whole layer with water, like a thin layer of water, not too thin because you don't want it to dry as you're painting, but a thin layer of water. And what you do is you put the colors on top. And what it does is it helps the paint not stick to the paper without flow. And it helps you continuously mix like the water and the colors, and without them drying, and just blending them together is very, very, very easy. So you'll see here that the paint is kind of like not smooth, but it's not sticking to the paper. And you're still able to blend it even with the time that I took to like pick the colors, blend them a little bit. And it's just so, so useful. Because if you don't do this, then, you know, like they dry because the paper is super, super dry. The paint will just soak in, and you won't get a seamless, like very, very smooth gradient. So if you're wondering how to do that and you didn't know, hopefully now you know, and it's super, super helpful. So here we are going into the shirt, adding in the patterns, and I think at this point I was a little bit nervous about it not looking entirely like the postcard, and there were some parts where I just like did not like the fact that I could not get the blue. I really liked how pretty the sky blue and how bright it was in the original draft, and I just could not get it to look that way on paper. I think because I'm a little inexperienced with how to get the color that I want in watercolors. But once I work on the new postcard, not the Anya one in this video, you'll see a little bit better that I start to understand how to get certain colors on the paper the way that I want. But either way, still really, really happy with how this is going so far. And you'll see me here adding a white kind of glittery paint. And this was something that, like I said earlier, sometimes you just improvise. And I think at this point I hadn't really thought to do it. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I did say it on stream, but I think it was something that I improvised. But I didn't want the shirt to be the same color as the background. And I didn't know what to do because I wanted it to still be white. So I was considering either I make the background a different color and leave the shirt white, and that different color would have to be like black or something, or I make the shirt a different color, make the shirt just black. But at this point, like, the color balance was already centered around the shirt being white and the background being white. So I figured that the only way to do it with what I had on me without ruining the original idea too much was to go through my colors and see what I could do. And then I remembered that I had this like glittery white paint, and so it just did such a pretty job of differentiating between the background and shirt while still leaving it white. And I ended up really, really loving how the glitter just really stood out, because sometimes like these glittery paints, you just can't really see them on the paper and they don't really stand out that much. So I was like, this is probably not really going to make that much of a difference, but it ended up looking really, really nice. And I don't know if that one's in the link down below, but I'll see if it is, and if it's not, I'll see if I can find it on Amazon so I can add it for you guys if you guys are curious, because every time I use it on stream, people always ask me which one it is. Same thing with the gold that I'm about to use, because I think they're the same brand, and I always have them when I work traditionally because I just love how bright it makes a picture look to add like these really, really intense like glitter paints and just hollow paints in general. And I usually just stick to, you know, like the basics, like gold, bronze, white, even like an onyx type gray black color. They just look so, so fun. And teal is one of my favorite colors. So you'll see that I make her eyes teal by using the teal glitter paint that I have as well. And in the original, you'll see that I have the sky blue put on her eyes, but because I couldn't find a way to get the exact color that I wanted, I ended up just deciding to maybe try working with the teal glittery paint. And honestly, I'm a little sad that at this point I haven't really truly not realized, but I've been so rusty because this is the first traditional postcard I've done in literal months. I'm almost venturing to say it's been probably close to a year, if not more, that I've done an actual postcard. So I felt pretty rusty in just using my traditional materials, but I kind of like fell into the flow pretty quickly. But there's still a lot of things I was really rusty on, like color picking and mixing and shadows and all those sorts of things. But I'm still really excited with how this came out. And all of that to say that if I had just realized that instead of using the exact pigmented color, that I could have just washed out the color that I had, because I had some very light blues. I could have also mixed it with some of the gouache that I had to just lighten up the sky blue and not go super, super intense on the darkness, because sometimes with watercolor, I've noticed if you go a little too intense on the color, you kind of lower the brightness of it, like if you just try to go too pigmented. And so I think what I should have done is just water down the light blue that I already had, because I had a very pretty sky blue already, and just put a very opaque kind of layer to make it that bright. And if I really wanted to, I could have just kept layering the bright opaque blue on top until I got like the perfect color. Because a lot of the times, at least to me, what happens to me with watercolor, I don't know if this happens with anyone else, but I kind of feel this need to make everything super pigmented, because I feel like it's not finished otherwise. I don't know why I think this way, but I kind of start to realize that I don't need to do that, kind of like into the next postcard, and then you'll see that I start to fully grasp it in the postcard in the other video. So yeah, I'm a little sad about that, but I'm starting to get used to it and really kind of put that into my brain. And so you'll see that I did the very saturated blacks there, and I don't think I recorded the rest of it. I actually have to check, but I don't think I recorded the rest of it. So you'll see it here already finished on the side. So I'm really, really sorry you didn't get to see the end of that, but you'll see the glitter eyes, you'll see the highlights of the paint on the hair, and just really just finished up and ready to go. But this one, as far as I remember, I recorded the whole thing, and so hopefully you'll get to enjoy the process of this one. I didn't record the thumbnails. I did the thumbnail off stream, but I really wanted to draw Anya with her back tattoo. So maybe I'll throw an example of a reference of her back tattoo on the screen so you guys can see more or less what it looks like. But I really, really love the design of it. And in general, she's just really cool. She's fun. She's got like this upbeat, like high energy kind of vibe. And so I really wanted to show that, as well as like Jet. I feel like with Jet, I feel like the expression probably could have been better. It doesn't look entirely like her. I think it's a little too, her expression might be a little too stale. But like I said, pretty rusty. So I feel like there were a lot of areas where the first postcard could have been better, like expression wise, color picking, shading, a lot of other things. So hopefully I start really getting into the swing of things, and maybe some of the drawings won't suffer because of that. So for this postcard, I wanted to keep the same thing, just really, really colorful, basically kind of rainbowish, same kind of like drippy, trippy kind of vibe with the colors. But I didn't want to do the same thing. I felt like it would have been way too samey if I would have gone with the same pattern in the back plus the same colors. But Anya and her group have kind of the same color scheme, which is a combination of some of my favorite colors, which is orange and teal. Together just looks so fucking cool to me. I love that combination of colors. And so her tattoos are those colors. And what I decided might be really cool was to do the same style of the background that Jet has, but use those colors instead. And so that way it's colorful, it's not rainbow, but it kind of follows the same theme where it's just kind of really colorful. So the postcards still look like they belong together. So I do the same thing where I keep Anya grayscale, and I add splashes of color, as well as using the white glittery paint and the gold as well, because usually when I do these postcards, you'll see my head popping in while working on the postcard, like I mentioned earlier, just hunching over the drawing. And but yeah, usually when I do these postcards, I think I have several speed paints up on this channel. If you guys want to check them out, maybe I'll throw them up on screen, or maybe I'll put them in the end screen if you guys are interested. But I always love doing matching sets. So if I have to do multiples at once for different people, and it's for the same event, or like I did on Patreon, I would do monthly postcards for the same month for different people. I would make sure that the postcards matched in theme, but they were different characters, so that way it's almost like a set, like each person has a different piece of the set. And I always found that concept really, really fun. So because these were all for one charity, I decided to keep them both in the same kind of theme as a set so that each person could have one for that charity event. And so I was just so excited while working on this one because I was worried about how the angle was going to come out, how her face was going to look. I didn't want it to look super basic. I was already worried since, like I mentioned, the first postcard just felt a little stale. Like I liked the whole pose and the composition, but I feel like her face didn't do exactly what I wanted it to do. And so I was worried that this one, the same thing would happen. But I'm really proud of how her face came out. I feel like it looks like her. She looks cool. She looks cute. She looks upbeat. And I really like how her back came out as well. I'm not the best at drawing backs, but I really, really love how it came out. And one of the things I was struggling with when I was drawing this initially was that the way that I had built the composition, not enough of her tattoo was showing. And not just that, but the bandages around her chest weren't enough either. It was just like this really awkward set of proportions. And so because the bandages were going to be where I balanced out the set theme by matching the white glittery paint of the original, I needed to make sure there was a significant amount in the picture so that way it doesn't look random. Like I needed both postcards to follow the same general color patterns. So I really had to do some Tetrising there to make sure that you got enough of the tattoo but also enough of the bandages. I gave Anya the fishnets in the hand to really just kind of reinforce the same style. Gave her the chain, gave her the piercings, gave her the choker. Also gave her some piercings just for some added fun. Gave the glasses to kind of make it match a bit, be able to add a splash of color on the face, and added her brass knuckles, spike knuckles, because that's where we were going to put some of the gold to balance out the drawing again. And so here we are again, took a picture. You'll see how different the line quality is compared to the speed paint. Again, I'm sorry, but I will try my best to get a different camera. Unfortunately, a lot of the speed paint for the next video with a postcard is going to be similar to this one. And I'm almost done with the postcard. I'm going to try filming the end part with my phone and see how different the quality is. From what I remember, it was really, really good. So hopefully it's not incredibly jarring to see the change in quality in the middle of the speed paint. We'll see, but I'm so sorry in advance for that one as well. But maybe I'll have a different camera by then. If not, I'll probably just continue using my phone if it ends up working. But so in this one, we start planning out the colors, and you'll see me kind of starting to plan out the teals and the oranges in the back using the same pattern, but trying not to copy entirely the other one. And I really start having fun with this like salmonish magenta color, which I really, really love as well. And I start adding this really light, beautiful teal in the tattoo. I really, really do. I love in watercolor doing gradients. And so that's why when I do values, just straight black and white, I love adding these really intense like gradients from pitch black to just almost very, very like this light gray, and just making the gradient seamless. That's like one of my guilty pleasures. So if I can do that in color as well, then it's really, really fun. But these neon like cyan colors that you see there in the middle of the splotches on the background and the ones on her tattoos are the ones I start having a meltdown on because I cannot find a way to get those colors. And like I said, not kind of rusty and not experienced enough to have figured out that I could just do that from the beginning. So you'll see me just struggling and getting really tilted, because I remember when I started doing the tattoo, I was pretty tilted about not being able to get the right color, because I loved the colors so much in the draft and I was just so incredibly sad. Not just that, but the salmon color, I couldn't get it exact, but I think that one was more an issue of my color picking rather than kind of my issue before, or maybe a combination of both. I don't know. But you'll see me here doing like a very, very light gray for Anya's skin color, trying to add just some volume to her skin so that it's not like just plain white. I start adding the liquid latex so we can start working on the background, start working on the tattoos, and while I work on one, I can work on the other so we can go back and forth, since they're in separate parts of the drawing, so we can work on both, letting each part dry and coming back to it, just trying to kill two birds with one stone to do that, and also letting the liquid latex dry a bit. So definitely being able to work smart, not hard, So here we go, going in with a very, very thin layer of the original color. And you'll see me start to realize that I'm not able to get like as light of a color as I wanted. And I wasn't able to come up with like a salmon color. So you'll see me here try to start doing like mixed media in order to get the colors I want. And so this middle kind of highlighter pink color was basically a pen that I had that I knew kind of had the color that I wanted, but the gradient wasn't exactly what I wanted. It didn't go all the way down, and I started getting kind of tilted. And the gradient on the tattoo also didn't really go the way I wanted. It's nowhere near as neon as I wanted. And I start to get pretty worried here. You can see that on the top, the camera doesn't capture it very well, but I tried to find a place to put the glittery kind of teal paint somewhere, and I figured that I would just splash it onto the tattoo. And so you'll see that it looks kind of unfinished and splotchy, but what that is the teal paint. So later when I do a zoom in B-roll kind of scene, you'll be able to see it a little bit better in detail. And you'll see here also that I kind of ended up swapping the plan for the tattoo and just kind of lean into the royal blues a bit. I think for the rest of the background, I end up doing that as well, because I can't get the colors to match. Colors start bleeding into each other. And at this point, I'm kind of panicking, because the original vision of the postcard starts kind of melting before my eyes. And at this point, I have to start improvising to make the drawing still work and look nice without, completely destroying it. So at this point, I have to saddle up, untilt, and just push through and just make things work out. So you'll see me kind of splash in, I think, the glitter in there as well, really trying to get as close as I can to the original. And you'll see me here just splash in those royal blues from the tattoo, so that way I can kind of use that improvisation to make everything match a little bit more and tie in the drawing together. And one of the things, I don't remember what artist I got this from, and I feel like this advice maybe might seem like common sense, but when they put it like this, it really made me see things more clearly. And what they said is you can essentially put any color you want in the drawing and it will work. The only thing you have to do is put that color somewhere else and balance it out in your drawing, and the color will just look like it fits, because you've essentially just injected it into the drawing. And by putting it in other places, obviously, sometimes you got to make sure you're putting it in the right places and in incorporating it properly. You can't just randomly splash it, but there has to be some method to the madness, But if you do that, you can essentially make any color fit. And so sometimes during some improvisation, just even digitally, traditionally, anything, if I end up having to kind of make a certain color work because either a mistake happened or I changed the direction of the drawing or anything, I usually just find other places to put it, and it just kind of ends up working out. So you'll see in the background, originally, like, the blues weren't that royal. It was more kind of leaning towards teal and stuff, but I essentially had to kind of inject it in other places because the gradient on the back tattoo wasn't really working the way I wanted. And I kind of ended up liking the injection of the royal blue in the tattoo, because then I realized that it balanced out the background a little bit more, because the teals in the background are still more royal than the ones on the tattoo. So it kind of ended up working out. It was kind of like a semi-improvise, semi-fix the original values. So it was really, really fun. I'm glad I ended up kind of going that route. And here you'll see me kind of fixing everything by adding like a nice like magenta orange, like saturated border, and really sealing everything together, making it more clean, because sometimes I can't tell if it's the brush or if it's just my lack of experience using liquid latex. But the liquid latex, when I do it at least, is not that perfect. Like I always, when I take it off, like I have to fix it. So you'll see me going in even after I take it off, like I have to fill in the little gaps that I kind of half covered with the liquid latex and just clean it up. So I think it might be the brush, because the brush I'm using is kind of like ruined by the liquid latex. If you've never used it, maybe I'm using it improperly, but when I use it, I have one brush for it because it essentially just ruined the brush. I let it dry on the brush and then it just like, I can't get it out. So maybe if there's anybody that uses that and has any advice for that, it all is welcome. And so here we are using the gold paint, which I'll try. This is the one I was mentioning earlier, that I'll see if I can find it on Amazon and put it in the shop as well. But I absolutely love this gold paint. It is so incredibly pigmented, and the second you just put it on the paper, it looks so beautiful. It's not like, you know how sometimes you buy like these gold materials and they're like, yeah, it's gold, and then you do it, it's like watery, it's not heavy, it like doesn't blend in properly, it's like the glitter is kind of like sparsed out. But this is like premium grade gold. I absolutely love this one. Same thing as the white paint that I was using earlier. Here you can see it a little bit better on the bandages, like the way the light was hitting it earlier, you can definitely see it better. And yeah, I absolutely love that paint. It just really brings out the accents in the drawing traditionally. And yeah, highly recommend if you've never used one of those. Here we start doing the gradients on the hair. Like I told you guys, guilty pleasure doing really intense gradients and doing really, really dark, almost incredibly pure black shadows. And so I really just fill in that back part of the hair and then do this really, really soft gradient on the hair. And a lot of the times it's a lot darker in the original color draft, but one of the things I think I've mentioned before that I struggle with is, especially traditionally, is trying not to ruin my lines. And I put so much time into doing the lines that if I go too dark on the colors, I essentially kind of just hide all the effort that I went through with my lines, especially since they're so thin, and I just love adding so much detail to it that I kind of feel like it's a waste, you know? And that's just for me personally. And like, of course, you know, to each his or her own, their own, whatever it is that you want. I guess I'm missing the end part of the other one as well, but yeah, so sometimes I'll do lighter colors just so that you can see the line work, and that way it doesn't ruin it. But yeah, and here we are with the finished products. I'm sorry that I didn't have the finishing portions of the postcards. I really thought that I had the finished one of this one, but I guess not. But hopefully you'll enjoy this B-roll, and you can really see the quality and the details much better here. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys really enjoyed that, let me know down below. I'm sorry that the video is so long. I'm sorry that if my commentary was not helpful, if it was too much rambling. Like the video if you liked it. Comment, let me know what you thought. Subscribe, join the Nippy family. The more, the merrier. Again, I'll share the videos here of some of the other postcards that I've done. If you guys want to see that, these characters are from my 18+ comics, so I'll put the links of that down below if you guys are interested in checking it out. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next video. Yay! Bye!